Joining us now, Michael Stumo, who's the Chief Executive Officer of a Coalition for a Prosperous America. You can get more information by going to prosperousamerica.org, prosperousamerica.org. He's been an ally of ours in trade and strategic trade and good jobs and good pay for American workers for many years. And I want to get his take today on a couple of the issues of the day. Michael, great to have you.
Good morning, John. Great to be here.
Okay, let's hit it hard. Let's hit it heavy. I want to get first to Trump's retaliatory tariffs on Turkey. And there's a debate here. Were these really for economic reasons, or were they retaliatory for the fact that he's very upset that the Turkish government has arrested a U.S. pastor, will not release him? And what impact will this have?
Sure. Well, it's a mix of all, but the doubling of the tariffs on steel and aluminum as to Turkey, Trump said it was because their currency slides downward against their very strong dollar. So the dollar goes up, Turkish currency goes down, and so that's blunted some of the impact of the initial tariffs against Turkey. So he's doubling the aluminum from 10 to 20%, the steel from 25 to 50%. And, of course, relations with Turkey are not good at this time. But this is also a shot across the bow against China and others that want to use currency to neutralize the effect of our tariffs.
Now, explain that for those listening to us right now that might not know exactly what you mean as far as your currency in one country devalues against the dollar, and that minimizes the impact of the tariff. Explain how that works, if you would. Michael.
Sure. Currency. Turkey relies pretty heavily on its steel. So Erdogan is, he's a strong man. He's a kind of a tin pot dictator. They're the 8th biggest steel producer in the world. When Trump put on tariffs against steel and aluminum, one thing when another country has a devaluation, when they devalue, it makes everything that they sell cheaper. So Trump made Turkey's steel and aluminum more expensive as they were pushing it into the U.S. market, taking out our industry. By devaluing, they neutralized it because everything bought from Turkey becomes cheaper. The dollar goes up. Everything sold by the U.S. gets more expensive. So Turkey's currency going down is like a subsidy on their exports to counter the effect of our tariffs. So that's what he's talking about.
But, Michael, wouldn't that hurt the Turkish consumer trying to travel or buy foreign goods of any kind?
Well, sure it does. And when China or Japan or South Korea, devalues their currency, that does hurt their consumers a bit. But the bigger impact is it increases their productive capacity and their ability to create jobs and to export, and that's a bigger impact than the negative on the consumer. That's something the American pundits often overlook, and that's how those countries grew from poor to rich. So Turkey's taking that path. Plus, they've got some internal issues going on where Erdogan put his relative in charge of the central bank, who's doing some crazy policies as well, his son-in-law.
So when the president accuses China and other countries of currency manipulation, explain what he means by that.
Sure, they buy dollars, push the dollar up. They sell their own currency. When you have a big sale, on anything in sell and oversupply in sales with your own currency drives your own currency down. So, pushing the dollar up, pushing their own currency down, that makes their exports more competitive. It's a tariff on our imports to them, our sales to them, and for the U.S. When the dollar is strong, it makes it very hard for all goods and services in the U.S. to be exported.
So we've got another round of tariffs that the president has now put on China, and China's retaliated. And so what's the Chinese endgame here? Because they need our consumers. They've got the $550 billion annual trade deficit going their way. What is their endgame?
They're trying to make Trump back down. They're trying to hit politically sensitive items like agriculture, soybeans, beef, etc. They're trying to make Trump back down and not continue defending the U.S. national interests. They're also devaluing their yuan or renminbi to counter the effect of Trump's tariffs. So Trump, instead of backing down like past presidents would have, is doubling down and increasing this latest tranche, or likely increasing this latest tranche of tariffs against 200 billion of Chinese products from 10 to 25%. And it's interesting that his tweet on Friday against Turkey mentioned Turkish currency, the lira, going down. So he's doubling the tariffs, so that devaluation doesn't neutralize the tariffs, and he's also putting it in. See, Erdogan gave a very fiery speech against the U.S., saying that Turkey's going to be defending their interests, and so it's a shot across the bow against Turkey, but it's also a shot across the bow against China and others that Trump is serious. This is not a short-term game. We'll protect our national interest.
We're with Michael Stumo. He is the Chief Executive Officer of the Coalition for a Prosperous America. They've been fighting for better U.S. jobs and wages for a very long time, and they favor strategic trade as opposed to the nonsense we've got now masquerading as free trade, which basically is the Pavlov's dog whistle for a globalization and selling out the U.S. workers, all it is. So, Michael, let's get back to this shot across the bow. This is an interesting concept here that you're laying out, that you're saying that a part of the reason that the president doubled the tariffs to Turkey, along with their devalued currency, is he wants to send a very strong message back to the Chinese that they're in a battle that, like the Chinese are just banking on the president to cave. And I think if you look at, they're targeting soybeans and they're targeting things that might impact the election in some Midwestern congressional districts, expecting the president, to cave, right? Just like they've all done. And he's not only caved, he's doubled down. So normally the Chinese get things so right. How can on this issue they be so wrong?
Well, because, usually the Chinese were right.
That's right.
Always worked in the past.
It's always worked. That's what I'm saying.
They're over-reliant on the U.S. Market for growth. They're over-reliant on the U.S. Consumer for growth, and it's always worked before because we have this whole cheap consumer goods mentality. And when they do retaliate on agriculture and, for example, distilled spirits, beer, wine, booze, those lobbies go into action in the U.S. and go to their congressmen and their senators and say, hey, stop this. We're getting tariffs against our products, and so we've got to cave and back down. And that message usually gets to the White House, to the congressional offices. They write letters. So when China, Europe, or others retaliate, it's been very effective to cause U.S. trade associations to go into gear to protect their interests. But what's happening with the tariffs now, and we're releasing a report today or tomorrow, is that when you stop the subsidies, when you neutralize it, when you fix it, we're seeing a lot more jobs in washing machines. We're seeing 11,000 jobs created in washing machines, solar panels, steel, aluminum, and other products that have been now protected from the unfair cheating from other countries. So we're getting a lot of job creation going on in the U.S., which, again, is the game to build your productive capacity so you create good-paying jobs. You pay a little bit for the, on the cheap consumer import side, but it's not nearly as much as you gain on the job side.
I tell you what, I'm so glad you came on today to clear that up for us, Michael. And you're right. I mean, the foreign governments like the Chinese, right, they target a certain industry, then the lobbyists get involved, and the lobbyists go run the Congress because they're making all the money, and they want to protect the farmer or the soybean or the distillery or the whiskey maker, whatever it is, and then they lobby their congressmen and senators that go back to the White House, and everybody panics and they cave. And that's been going on, and that's what the Chinese have been banking on. This president did the opposite. He doubled down. He did the exact opposite. That's why I'm telling you, the Republicans are going to hold the Congress, Michael, by 3 votes. That's my prediction. John Fredericks Radio Network, Coalition for a Prosperous America. More of Michael Stumo and his organization. Go to prosperousamerica.org. Retaliatory.org.